With the 15th pick and with the 26th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Dwayne Haskins, Montez Sweat.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report. Fresh off the Redskins' 19-7 preseason game number 3 victory, their first of the 2019 preseason. And so the Redskins now are 1-2 in the preseason. And as I've mentioned before many a times, I'm going to mention it again here. The outcome of the game, not necessarily the biggest thing that you're looking to achieve at the end. When you're looking at things and you're stacking up where the actual win or loss kind of plays into your thoughts after the game, it's sort of down the list. As I've said, I want to win anytime I do anything. I don't care if it's tic-tac-toe or if it's hopscotch. I want to win, all right? I don't give a damn if I'm racing up the steps against somebody that doesn't even know they're racing me. I want to win. But in the preseason, when you're talking NFL or any sport for that matter, the score is not of much consequence as much as it is getting out of the game healthy, which the Redskins, for the most part, achieved. There was one injury. It's not an injury that's going to end the season, but it's something that we just didn't want to have happen. We'll talk about that. I'll give you my 5 biggest takeaways from the Redskins' 19-7 victory over the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta in preseason game number 3 here in a second. But I want to get to some things that I'm not going to talk about as much at length as I would like to in those 5 takeaways. And so I want to touch on those now before I forget. I want to start with guys that I thought stood out in this game and really looked good heading into the 2019 regular season. We're going to knock on some wood for Casanova Mckenzie right now because he's going to play in the 4th preseason game. A lot of the guys that I'm going to mention aren't going to play, so we know they should be ready to rock and roll for week 1, barring any kind of setback in practice. So more knocking on wood for that. But Casanova Mckenzie, he's been so impressive this entire preseason. Every single game, you walk away saying, man, Casanova Mckenzie looks good. He looks like a dynamic edge presence. And you know what? I've said this. I said it last night. I've said it a couple of times. And I don't want to go off the deep end with this because not a lot of guys have played in the preseason. Sweat hasn't had a ton of snaps. Kerrigan hasn't had a ton of snaps. But we know who Ryan Kerrigan is at this point of his career. He doesn't look like Mckenzie coming off the edge. Casanova Mckenzie has a burst. He has the ability to beat a guy off the snap with just pure speed and athleticism. That's not something that Ryan Kerrigan possessed. He's more of a power pass rusher. But Mckenzie has a little juice off the edge, and that gives us another guy that you can throw in the mix on an obvious passing down 3rd and 8. If I'm Greg Minuski, this guy has to see the field in some capacity in obvious passing situations. You need to try to go get the quarterback and bag a quarterback late in a ball game or right before halftime, or a team is trying to put together a drive and you need a stop desperately, and it's 3rd and 7, it's 3rd and 8, it's 3rd and 11. Casanova Mckenzie is a guy that I want on the football field. This guy has been ultra impressive. He was dominant last night, had a sack, a couple of other pressures. He was constantly around the quarterback and making plays. So this is a guy that throughout the preseason has been a name that consistently comes up as a guy that has played well throughout the preseason, and he did it again last night. And so I thought that bared mentioning. Also, Deron Payne, man, god damn. And we talked about this last night. And for those of you who joined me on the live stream last night, it was a blast. Glad you guys were able to join me. Made it a lot of fun. Sometimes these preseason games are hard to get through, but you guys make it a lot more enjoyable and tolerable. And so thank you again for that. But we talked about Deron Payne's presence last night and how good he's looked this preseason. I thought he was outstanding in week 2 versus Cincinnati. Had the batted ball that led to the interception. But not only that, he was consistently in the backfield and stopping runs in that game. He did it again in this game. He was all over the field. He was in the backfield, knifing in, making his presence felt. Even if he didn't make the tackle, he was disrupting the play. And that's something that you want from your defensive tackles. They're not always going to make the play. You hear this with Aaron Donald, and yes, Aaron puts up numbers. Never, ever trust a man with 2 first names. He puts up numbers, okay? He's getting 19 and 20 and 18 sacks a year. But what he also is doing is he's disrupting plays, just blowing shit up. And before a play can even really get started, he's already effing it up. And we're seeing that from Daron Payne more and more, man. I am really excited about what 2019 can be for this guy. Looking at what he's done in the preseason, he's really impressive. And I might be wrong about Daron Payne. I'm not willing to concede that other guys might not have been a better selection there. But I will concede that if he continues on this path, that he is much better than I gave him credit for. And the ceiling, a lot of you kept talking about his ceiling, and I was like, I already know what his ceiling is. It's a glass ceiling. There's not much more he can provide for us other than a guy that can stop the run. I might be wrong about that. I'm almost willing to concede and give out a 00, okay? I'm not ready to hand out that 00 just yet, but it's coming if he continues to play the way that he's played this preseason, and hell, even last regular season where he compiled 8 sacks in 2018. So we'll see if this continues into the regular season and he becomes a dominant force, even more so than potentially Jonathan Allen, which I didn't think was possible. But right now, he looks the more dominant of the two. We'll see. There's space for dominance for all of them, and I'm hoping that all of them take it to another level in 2019. Landon Collins was outstanding in this football game and continues to be a standout at the safety position. We see what the game's been missing. DJ Swearinger was a really solid player. I don't want to dismiss what he was for us, but Landon Collins seems to be on another level, I think. Collins almost had an interception of Matt Ryan over the middle against Calvin Ridley on a ball that was probably a little bit behind Ridley. Doesn't matter. Still great coverage and presence of mind to undercut that route and almost pick it off. You've got the tackle for a loss. Again, I talked about guys stepping up. Ryan Anderson also had a very solid performance. I thought he flashed in this football game, made some plays, disrupted some plays as well. And it was one of those plays where Sweat jumped into the backfield, and I thought he was solid too. He had a pressure in this game, and that got me really excited to see him beat a tackle right around the edge with speed, which is what we know he brings to the table. Where there was a run to his side, he jumps to the outside, forces the running back to have to cut it to the outside, stop his feet temporarily. Landon Collins knifes into the backfield, tackle for loss, 2-yard loss on the play. You're seeing that more and more with Collins being a presence around the line of scrimmage. It was good to see him be a presence away from it on the near interception. So thought he was another guy that stood out in this game. And it was good to see Montez Sweat, get some pressure on the quarterback and be a part of the defensive disruption that was early in this game from the defense, along with some guys on the offensive side that were able to make plays. Kelvin Harmon made some good grabs on some offerings from Dwayne Haskins. Cam Sims, this was by far and away his best showing of this preseason. We've heard all the talk about Cam Sims and how good he's looked in training camp and in the OTAs and how he's been a standout. Well, we haven't seen it in the preseason. He really took a huge step forward in preseason game number 3, making some big catches and some nice runs after the catch. The wide receiver position is going to be so interesting because a guy like Robert Davis, who we've seen in the first 2 preseason games, didn't get a lot of run last night. And I don't really know what to make of that. Does that mean that he's a guy that's on the outside looking in, as I thought initially when the preseason first started? Or does that mean Jay has seen enough, thinks that this guy is good and he's a core special teamer and he's going to make the roster? I really don't know what to make of Kelvin Harmon getting more reps than Robert Davis in preseason game. And this is the most important one. So you would think that the guys that you feel like are going to be around, we're going to play more in this game. We'll see what happens. But one thing's for sure, some young receivers did make some plays and some catches. And we didn't see as much of Haskins throwing the football as we probably would have liked to. And I think it felt like that, and when it was all said and done, I think he still ended up with the same amount of attempts that he had last game, which was 14. But it just felt like he didn't throw it enough in this game. But that's nor here nor there. A lot of good takeaways from this particular football game. Obviously, some that I haven't gotten to. And why haven't I gotten to them? Because they're in my top 5 biggest takeaways from this game versus the Atlanta Falcons. So let's get to those 5 biggest takeaways, shall we? And what the Redskins were able to do in this 19-7 victory. Number 5 is not necessarily a good thing, but it's a nitpick for me. After 6 preseasons, Jay Gruden still doesn't understand how they work. All right. And you know what he reminds me of in the preseason? Those 2 old ladies in the Geico commercial. And she was talking about social media, and the one older grandma that got it was like, no, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And I feel like that with Jay in the preseason. Like, bro, you don't kick 23-yard field goals in the preseason. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. All right? This is what you use the preseason for. You know that play that you have that's you got stashed away for your special 2-point conversion situation in a game where you got to have it? When you get down to the 1-yard line and you can't punch it in on first down and you can't punch it in on second down, and maybe you don't punch it in on third down. I don't know. That's that one play that you need 2 yards to get a touchdown, or in that case, I'm referring to a 2-point conversion. This is the time to use that play. You know, when you get down inside the 5-yard line, this isn't the time to kick a 23-yard field goal. We know Dustin Hopkins is good from 23. I don't know about you. I feel pretty confident that Dustin Hopkins is pretty good from 23 yards away. I don't know about you. And I know there were some guys out there and some people out there that were questioning Dustin Hopkins after last week's performance. And I'm like, don't worry about D-Hop. He's fine. But I don't need D-Hop from 23. I'm good. I appreciate the offer. D-Hop from 50 like he made on the first field goal, I want to see that. D-Hop from 40, as we saw later in the game, I'm cool with that. But D-Hop from 23, I'm going to pass on that, though. Thank you. I appreciate the gesture. I'd like to actually see you go for it on 4th down right there. Let Dwayne Haskins throw the football again. I'd appreciate that. So, you know, there are instances where it's 4th and short, and I'm like, hey, Jay, it's the preseason, bro. How about going for it? You know, roll the dice a little bit. It's the preseason. That's what teams do in the preseason. You get to try shit in the preseason that you wouldn't try in the regular season because it's the preseason and it doesn't count. But Jay, for some strange reason, he really wanted to win this game. And he decided, I'm going to do the smart thing. I'm going to kick the field goal. Hey, bro, that's not exactly how the preseason works. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. But again, as I mentioned against Cleveland, or I think it was Cincinnati, when I got all, twisted around about and up in arms about him not throwing it enough with Haskins and running it. Hey, man, I've said my piece. I'm not one of those guys that likes to criticize play calling every single week, especially in the preseason. But again, understand what the preseason is for. And I don't think Jay, after 6 seasons, still understands what the preseason actually is for. But that's nor here nor there. Let's get to takeaway number 4. All right. F, man. Up. Jordan Reed got a concussion, man. Shit. That was something that we didn't want to see happen. Now, it's not a torn ACL, knock on wood. It's not a torn pectoral muscle, knock on wood. It's a concussion. Those heal. He can come back from this. The problem is Jordan Reed's already had like 5 or 6 concussions in his career already that we know of. And remember, back in either his rookie season or his second year, he got a concussion at the end of that season. And it was like the mid portion of the season. And he missed like the final 6 or 7 games. So he's had some serious concussions in his career. That was a vicious hit. That's exactly what we didn't want. And I know a lot of people that want to keep Jordan Reed in bubble wrap. And I know all of the Jordan Reed fans out there are going to come out of the woodworks. This guy can't ever stay healthy. That's why we need to trade Jordan Reed. Shut up, okay? Zip it before I break your hip. Simply put, this shit happens. Seems to happen to him more than other players. But as I explained last night during the telecast, when you work the middle of the football field as effectively as Jordan Reed does, you're going to find yourself in some very, very precarious situations. And he often finds himself lowering his head and a defender coming in, and he seems to take the brunt of it 9 times out of 10. That's exactly what happened there. He also had a critical drop on the 3rd down. But more times than not, he's going to catch that football. He's going to convert on a 3rd down and move the sticks. You don't want to see him get hurt, especially a guy the caliber of a Jordan Reed who changes things. We don't have many guys that teams come into a game saying, look, we got to take this guy away. We got a game plan to stop 86. He's one of the few on our offense. And so we need Jordan Reed healthy. I feel good about this. And again, you can never really quantify just how severe a concussion is. All right. It's not like an ankle sprain where you say, hey, that's normally a 2 to 4 week recovery time on that. Concussions vary with the severity of the concussion and how the symptoms are coming along. And so we don't know. You can't put a time frame on this. Oh, he'll be back in a week, or oh, he'll be back in 2 weeks. He might not be back for 5 weeks after this concussion. If, in fact, it is a concussion, he was in the protocol, I can't see how you don't walk away from that particular hit with his history without having a concussion. I just don't see how it happens. The good thing is he's got 2.5 weeks to hopefully have these concussion symptoms go away. So, you know, it happened on a Thursday. We don't play. He's not playing next Thursday. The following Thursday, that will be the start of the NFL regular season where the Bears and the Packers will meet. And then you've got all the way until Sunday when the Redskins will then take on the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia for week 1 of the 2019 season. So in effect, he's got 2.5 weeks to see if he can progress back to a point where he can get on the field for us, man. It sucks when someone gets injured, but if it was going to be somebody, we had a feeling it would probably be Jay Reed. But he does look good, and he does look poised for a big season if him and Case Keenum or whomever the quarterback is able to get on the same page. And I think Jordan Reed will be just fine. But damn, he got a concussion. We didn't want to see that. You go to biggest takeaway number 3. Darius Geis is nice. Nice, baby. We talking Geis, baby. He's nice. And we thought that this guy was going to be a big-time player for us last year when we drafted him. But we obviously didn't get to see the full extent of what this guy could bring to the table due to the injury early in preseason last year. As a matter of fact, preseason game number 1 versus New England, and got injured on a big carry where we got excited. And so we got to see it early and often last night for the first time since the injury last year. Darius Geis looks good, man. And again, you see the difference between a Darius Geis and a Samaje Perine, or a Darius Geis and a Byron Marshall. You see the difference between a Darius Geis and I know they're not the same type of back, but even a Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson isn't making anyone miss necessarily. If there's a hole there to be hit, Chris Thompson will hit it with very good aggression and quickness, but he's not making anybody miss out in space. That's not what Chris Thompson does very often. Like, he's not juking anybody. He's not running through anyone. Darius Geis had a nasty, vicious, flavor, delicious, poetic scripture stiff arm last night on a run to the outside where he was able to finish it off with an exclamation point with it lowering the shoulder right by the sideline. So that was a good aggressive run. My favorite Darius Geis run wasn't the first run, which was impressive. Him getting to the outside, sticking his foot in the ground, cutting up the field, lowering the shoulder and picking up a first down. No, that wasn't my favorite Darius Geis run. It wasn't even the stiff arm as he got to the outside of a defender and knocking him to the ground, then lowering his shoulder to finish off a run with an exclamation point and staying on his feet as he goes out of bounds. No, that wasn't my favorite run. My favorite one was a dirty run that I talked about several times on the telecast last night, where it was a gun run. He runs up the back of his guard, who doesn't create a lot of space for him on the play, stops his feet, then has the presence of mind and the vision and the athleticism to then cut it up, accelerate, and get a gain of 4 on a play that, if that's Samaje Perine, he continues to run up the back of his offensive lineman, puts his head down, gets no yards or a gain of 1 at best. Instead, Geis stops his feet and then turns, locates a hole because him stopping made the defense over pursue. It then creates a small crease, a small cutback. He then takes full advantage of that, accelerates, gets 4 yards. Instead of 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, it's now 2nd and 6. That's a huge difference in a set of downs. 2nd and 6 versus a 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10. So it's those types of runs you get with Adrian Peterson. And those are the types of runs you're also going to get with Darius Geis. And so you got to feel good about getting another back in there that can do the same things that Adrian Peterson can do. And so Peterson doesn't have to get worn down in a game. And when we go to spell him, you're not having that dramatic drop-off that we've seen in the past to a guy that isn't necessarily good enough to get the yards that are there and then some, which we saw Geis do last night. So I'm really excited about Geis. You should be as well. Caught it out of the backfield a little bit too. I think he's got a little ways to go in the pass pro department, but that's what we got Chris Thompson for. I really like what we saw out of Darius Geis. And hell, even Samaje Perine was a little bit better last night as well. I think that's worth noting. But Darius Geis was as advertised last night, and we're hoping he is as advertised throughout the 2019 regular season and is able to stay healthy. Let's knock on some wood for that one. So you go to takeaway number 2, and it's upon further review, Eric Flowers can't start at left guard. And last night I tried to make a case for him getting better, and it's not that bad. And we're going to see if they can, turn this reclamation project into a serious benefit to us moving forward. And remember, I was complaining about some of the plays happening so quickly, and I'm watching other guys and I'm watching other things that, normally if I weren't in my office, I would have been watching the game out in my family room where I have the capability to rewind and see exactly what happened. But in my office, I don't have that capability. So I couldn't go back, and I'm asking and I'm begging for replays, and we didn't get them. And so I had to go back and watch the game again. And remember, I talked about some pressure on Case Keenum that came from his backside where he got crushed. And I'm like, I don't know if that was Flowers or if that was Donald Penn. I need to see it again. No, it was Eric Flowers. Flowers, simply put, can't get the job done at guard. He's just not quick enough. His feet aren't quick enough. It's the same issue he had at tackle. You thought you could hide him inside at guard where you don't have to have the quickest of feet. If you got length and you got the ability to anticipate, you can get away with slow feet. Problem with Eric Flowers is he's got bad technique, he's got bad feet, and he doesn't anticipate well enough. And you saw it last night on the holding penalty down on the 1 yard line where he allowed Crawford to cross his face and had to hold him to stop him from getting into the backfield and maybe creating a 2 yard loss on the play. He got beat by Crawford again to the inside on a play where Case Keenum was looking to throw a fade ball down the sideline. It would have been a touchdown to Vernon Davis. VD had both of those defenders beat. With his speed, he would have ran right under the football, and Keenum gets crushed, and that football ends up sailing out of bounds. And that was all Eric Flowers getting beat like he stole something on that play. This cannot continue. If I'm Jay Gruden, I'm getting Wes Martin ready for week 1 as soon as possible. As we start practicing and we start implementing the game plan and putting in the things that we want to do for Philadelphia, Wes Martin is going to be right next to Donald Penn on that left side of the offensive line. And I just keep it moving and I don't look back. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I want to be this drastic and say that Flowers doesn't even need to make the roster, but if he can't start, what's the point of him being a backup? If we don't want to start him, that means we don't have enough confidence to have him in the game necessarily. I don't know if you feel good about him coming off the bench. I don't. I'd rather play musical chairs with the offensive line and rather than put him in. You know what I mean? I'd rather take Chase Roulier, move him from center to guard, and stick Ross Pierce-Baker at center and say, all right, let's keep it moving. You know what I mean? And you hate to rattle 2 positions to fix 1, but if I got to take a very good center and make him an average guard and take an average center off the bench and plug him in and have 2 average players than a below average left guard, then I much rather have that and be average across the board there than to have very good at center and below average at guard. I'd rather have average, which can get you by in this league at the guard and center positions, than below average at left guard. I just think if you're Jay Gruden, you have to have seen enough of this experiment and say, look, we tried. Hey, pat, Bill Callahan on the shoulder and say, hey, bro, you gave it a run. This is not salvageable, and just move on. Cut your bait, cut your losses, and let's just move on with the depth that you have at other positions and hope that it's enough to get us through the 2019 season. I just don't see Eric Flowers being a guy that you can rely on if he has to go in the game. That being said, the Redskins are very stubborn. It wouldn't shock me if he was one of the 8 or 9 offensive linemen that they kept. I don't see the value in keeping him if he's not starting, and I don't see him starting because he's not a consistent enough offensive lineman. He did some good things in the game, but his good things are quickly overshadowed by some glaring weaknesses that can kill drives and possessions with holding penalties and missed assignments. I just think you got to move on from Eric Flowers as the starting left guard. And my biggest takeaway from this game was Case Keenum is unequivocally the Redskins starting quarterback. I came into the game, and look, I already told you that I expected Case Keenum to be the starter. I told you that before the start of training camp. I told you that when we traded for him, I expect him to start. That's why they traded for him. I went through this whole long spiel last night about explaining that Colt McCoy could never be the starter. The Redskins have already told us this numerous times. Jay Gruden believes that Colt McCoy can start in this league and that he can win with Colt McCoy. But Bruce Allen doesn't believe that. And that's why there was the trade for Alex Smith. That's why there was the trade for Case Keenum, because they don't believe in Colt McCoy's ability to, one, stay healthy, but two, lead this team to anything meaningful. And so I had to go and expect that Case Keenum would be the guy. It took us a while to get there, but without a question now, without a doubt, he's the starting quarterback. He took every single first team rep that there was to be had in this football game. My naive thinking self felt like there was a way to get Dwayne one or two possessions with the first team offense just to see how he would do, just for, shits and giggles. Now, and you know what? If you're looking to calm any debate about a quarterback controversy, that's what you do. Because if they would have given Dwayne, let's say they give Dwayne two possessions with the first team offense, and Dwayne goes out and absolutely crushes it, goes 9 of 10 for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Case Keenum does what he did last night, which is 7 of 10 or 11 for 84 yards and an interception. And mind you, the interception wasn't totally on him, but it was on him to a degree. You got to protect the football a little bit better when trash is around you that way. But that's nor here nor there. Bottom line is, if Dwayne would have lit it up with the first team offense against Atlanta's first team defense, then you start to raise the question, and people in the locker room start to talk, and fans start to clamor. You didn't want to even open Pandora's box, so you don't give him any first team reps. You send the message to your team that Case Keenum is our starter. He'll be in the starting lineup week 1. You give him all the reps, and you shut down any notion of a quarterback controversy. That's what Jay essentially did in this preseason game. We thought that there was a chance, and we felt like there was progress being made. And Dwayne is still making progress, but we thought he was gaining ground potentially in this quarterback competition. That wasn't the case. I think Jay had already in his mind made up his mind and already had come to a conclusion that Case Keenum was going to be his guy. And last night, I think, confirmed that. And Case didn't play bad. I know I read there were a lot of comments last night during the telecast that, Case is garbage and Dwayne looks better. And that's because you're looking at it through a prism of rose-colored glasses because you want Dwayne to play. And trust me, Dwayne's going to play eventually. All right. It's only going to be a matter of time before Dwayne Haskins is under center and he's the starter moving forward. But Jay Gruden's trying to win. To hell with everything else. And I told you this in the offseason. We talked about this ad nauseum. Jay is trying to save his job. And if you're going to do that, a veteran quarterback gives you the best opportunity to do that. Now, there was this thought out here that, another way that Jay could save his job, even with a losing season, is to get Dwayne in there as soon as possible, really have him coach up Dwayne really well, have Dwayne play well, and have Dwayne potentially vouch for him like, hey, man, I love Jay. I'm really learning a lot from him. And you see the vast improvement as the season goes along, and you say to yourself, another year in Jay's system, and Dwayne might be able to take that massive leap in year 2 under Jay, and that's how Jay could come back. But Jay's not looking at it like that. Jay's saying, look, I need to win. Winning cures all. If we go 9-7 and sneak our way into the postseason with Case Keenum at quarterback, that may be enough to save my job. Case is only on a 1-year deal, so he goes after that. and Dwayne assumes the role of starter, and you go from there. But right now, and I don't see any of that taking place. I see the Redskins struggling with issues on the offensive line and turnovers and penalties and mistakes. We still got a lot of things to clean up. This defense and this run game are going to give us a legitimate shot. I think special teams is going to give us a shot. I think we're going to be in ball games, but I just don't know if we're going to have enough on the offensive side of the football to do what is necessary to win in this league, and that's score points. I just don't know if we're going to have enough to score, enough to beat teams that can score in this league. Again, if our defense is able to hold them down, similar to last year's recipe and formula for winning, play great defense, run the football, don't turn it over, limit the penalties and mistakes, and give yourself a chance to win. And we won some ball games early in the season like that. That's going to be the same formula for the Redskins to win in 2019. Nothing has changed. We still have some issues on the offensive side of the football, and Case Keenum, not necessarily the guy to help dispel those ills and notions of us struggling on offense, but he's not terrible. Watching him in the game, he's not terrible. He made some good throws, and I thought he was solid last night. So he's definitely the quarterback. That's the biggest takeaway. Dwayne didn't get in until the third quarter. And even when he got in there, Jay ran it a ton. Jay, let him throw it on one particular possession where we were backed up after a penalty to start the drive, was backed up on our own 6-yard line. And he just finally let Dwayne rip it. But before that possession, I think of the 14 throws, 13, because he was 7 of 13, of the 13 throws, Dwayne might have had 6 or 7 on them on that drive alone. Other than that, Jay was pretty conservative, running it a ton with Dwayne in the game. So I don't know how much of Dwayne we're going to see in the 4th preseason game. We may get a ton of McClendon in that game. Whatever the case may be, Case Keenum is going to be our starting quarterback, and we're going to run with that for as long as that goes. We'll see how far it takes us before number 7 gets his opportunity to be the starting quarterback of the Burgundy and Gold. So those are my 5 biggest takeaways from this game. What are some takeaways that you had from this game, and what are some things that you saw? I thought there were some really impressive performances. I've mentioned some of those guys. I thought Sweat did a good job. Still want to see something from Terry McLaurin. He only got the 1 target on the pass interference that he was able to draw in the end zone. I'd like to see more from him. I wasn't blown away, but again, they're not going to show their hand at this point of the season. In the preseason, I expect that they've got some tricks up their sleeve regarding him and Paul Richardson and some of the other guys on the roster. But we're going to start talking about roster construction now as we're in the final week of the preseason. Not a lot of action. And this last preseason game is going to be unbearable to watch if Haskins isn't playing a substantial amount of this game. It's going to be tough to stomach, but we'll talk about the roster, what players we think are going to make this roster. I'm most intrigued by the wide receiver position. And if you're going to keep potentially 7 receivers, where do you cut bait elsewhere on this roster? How many offensive linemen are you going to keep? Is Eric Flowers going to be one of them? That's another major question. You look at the linebacker position. I think it's our weakest position on this football team. Oh, yeah, another guy that played well. John Bostic has been impressive. I have to give him credit. I said, I don't know if it's that much of a trade-off. He's just a younger Mason Foster, and he's faster too. And we've seen that throughout this preseason. He's faster too. Some of you mentioned that, and you're right. He is faster. I didn't think he was that fast, and it's not like he's blazing fast, but he's faster than Mason Foster. So there's definitely an upgrade there with John Bostic, and he's a smart football player as well. So I've seen some good things from him as well. What are some takeaways from this game for you? And then overall, are there any takeaways that you have from this preseason? As it's pretty much done now, preseason game number 4 really doesn't have a lot of impact on this roster, except for maybe the final 5 to 7 roster spots may be up for grabs. But I think the coaching staff at this point pretty much knows who they're going to keep and who they're going to release. So if you have some takeaways, I'd love to hear it down in the comment section. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. And also remember, I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington Redskins. Another guy that I actually like is Craig. I want to call him Robertson all the time. God damn it. Craig R. I'm just going to call him Craig R because I keep forgetting his last name. Reynolds. Craig Reynolds. I like that kid, man. I don't know if I like him more than Samaje Perine, but it's damn close. I'll tell you that much. But Samaje isn't going anywhere. Anyway, you guys have a good one, and we'll chop it up a little bit later on.